Hello, everyone. Welcome to this evening's event. We're going to take the next couple of minutes to let folks trickle in, and we're hoping to start around 6 p.m. Eastern sharp. Thank you so much to everybody who's tuning in this evening. We're going to give it a couple more minutes, and then we will be jumping into this evening's agenda. Really looking forward to having you all here. It's going to be a great event tonight. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming on in. Thanks for registering for this evening's event. Really excited to get into it. We're going to take about 2 more minutes to let folks come in, and then we will get started at 6 p.m. Eastern very promptly. We're trying to be right on time today. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Really appreciate you being here this evening. We're going to give it 1 more minute, and then we are going to kick things off for the evening. We're going to start right at 6 p.m. Eastern. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you shortly. Thanks for coming this evening, folks. We're just going to let the last few registrants roll on in, and then we are going to get started very shortly with this evening's event with Girls20 and Revlon. Good evening, everyone. My name is Clancy McDaniel, and I am an alumna of Girls20's Young Director Program. Before we start this evening, I wanted to acknowledge that I am calling in from Jabuktuk, also known as Halifax, in Mi'kma'ki, which is the unceded, ancestral, and unsurrendered territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We know that we have folks who are calling in from all over the world. And I would just ask, as we get this evening's agenda rolling, that everybody take some time to think about whose land you are on and what your own relationship to that land looks like. As settlers, it is critical that we understand and are aware of the ways in which our participation in events like this and the ways that our broader work impacts Indigenous sovereignty. Today, we'll be talking about imposter syndrome, but before we get started, I wanted to tell you about how Girls20 and Revlon Canada have partnered to make this interactive webinar series possible. Leveraging the Revlon ColorStay territory of Made to be LifeProof, and in alignment with Girl20's mission to advance the full participation of young women and leaders in decision-making spaces, we want to champion you, our women leaders, and empower your growth. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're really excited for tonight's enriching conversation, where we are going to be discussing imposter syndrome. We know the world has told young women that they don't belong in powerful positions, so it's not surprising that so many of us, including myself, often feel like imposters when we finally break through and enter those spaces. After attending today's webinar, we hope that you'll walk away with a better understanding of the systems that have perpetuated imposter syndrome, the ability to identify feelings of imposter syndrome, and new techniques to navigate imposter syndrome when you come across it in real life. A little bit about the agenda for this evening. We're going to start off with a fireside chat between myself and Sarah Nurse, who I will be introducing shortly. And afterwards, you'll have the opportunity to participate in a workshop with Girls20's very own Miriam Butu. At the very end of the webinar, and as a reward for those of you who stay until the end and engage with us in the comments, we will be drawing 2 winners to receive a year's supply of Revlon ColorStay products. Very exciting. A few housekeeping items. So we highly encourage you to engage in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from, what you're resonating with. Is there anything that you really feel? But a few housekeeping technical notes around that. So new messages will appear at the top of the chat, not at the bottom of the chat. We're also going to be having a Q&A session at the end. So when it comes to that, if you take a look at the text bar on the bottom right of your screen, right above that on the right-hand side, it should say chat mode. If you click on that, that will bring you into Q&A mode. So if you have questions for speakers doing the Q&A, you need to be in Q&A mode in order to send those. If you want to be engaging with other attendees, you need to go back into chat mode. So if that's how you're chatting throughout the session, make sure you're in the right mode. We will also be asking you to answer some polls throughout the webinar, and we would love if you would be able to participate. And now, let's get into the real reason why you're here. Sarah Nurse is a member of Pain in women's hockey, sitting as a board member and key speaker for PWHPA and Dream Gap Tour events. Sarah comes from a family of pro athletes herself, including her cousins Darnell Nurse in the NHL, Kia Nurse in the WNBA, and her uncle Donovan McNabb, who is an ex-NFL quarterback. So with that, please join me in welcoming Sarah Nurse.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited.
I know, I'm so excited to have this conversation and get to talk with all of you.
Absolutely. So we're going to just jump into the topic at hand around imposter syndrome. So throughout your career in hockey, have you had moments where you felt like an imposter in that space?
Of course. I think it's something that I've dealt with for a very long time. And, even coming on and speaking about imposter syndrome today, I was kind of like, well, I'm not an expert. I haven't done extensive research. How am I qualified to talk about this? But I have experiences and I have opinions about imposter syndrome. And I think experiences are some of the most valuable things that we can all share with each other. And so for me, imposter syndrome kind of comes from that fear of failure, that constantly wanting to be perfect, and that constant pressure that I put on myself. And it shows up as self-doubt. And so I remember some of my earliest moments of feeling imposter syndrome before I knew what it was when I was in elementary school. The 2nd grade, I was the only girl on my hockey team. I was very good at hockey, and some of my teachers knew that. And hockey was all that I talked about. And so my grade 2 teacher, he was so supportive and wanted to come to a game. And he was like, I know how good you are. I've seen you in the paper scoring goals. I'd love to come see a game. And I remember just getting so nervous about that because all of a sudden he was going to come watch me. He was actually going to see if I was good at hockey. And I remember him coming to watch that game. And every single time I turned over the puck or I shot and missed the net, I kind of thought it was the end of the world. And I ended up that game with a couple of goals. But I felt that I wasn't at my best. And that was one of those moments where I was like, maybe I was just lucky that I scored. Maybe I don't deserve the accolades that I had in my short career up until that point. But that was really my first experience with it. And, being so young and not knowing how to handle it, it definitely impacted me for a few years to come. But it was all about, as I got older, finding methods and finding ways to really combat that.
Amazing. And I'm sure, for sure, having, someone who you really cared about being there and having that pressure on, it can definitely raise those types of questions. And I know we're going to get into some of the strategies that you've used to combat that throughout the duration of your very successful career from grade 2 onwards. Our next question is, it's a bit more personal and certainly kind of comes from the advocacy work that you've been doing. But we know that the experience of imposter syndrome is especially prominent among communities that have experienced systemic marginalization and oppression, who have been purposely designed out of these spaces. As a Black woman, have you felt that in the hockey world? And if so, do you think it's changing at all?
Yeah, well, I was doing a little bit of reading about this myself, and I actually read something that was so interesting to me, and it made so much sense. And it came down to the fact that when you don't see role models, or you don't see yourself represented in the industry or the field or the team, the organization, whatever it is that you're in, you unconsciously create this narrative and set self-limiting beliefs on yourself and what you can ultimately achieve. And so when you achieve those goals or you surpass those goals, you wonder, why me? Why was I the one to be able to do that? Again, did I just get lucky? And so thinking back to my career, and especially in the last few years with the surge of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I've definitely had those questions surrounding me because, to hype myself up, I do feel like I'm very, successful in hockey and what I've been doing for my entire life. But there are still those questions in the back of my mind, like, am I getting this because I fit into this box and people need to check this box? And I mean, I felt othered my entire hockey career when I started out, and I was the only girl playing with all of the boys. And then when I was the only biracial Black girl on my hockey team, I'd never played with anybody who wasn't a white hockey player before. And so one of my closest friends, Bridget Laquette, who is also on the Olympic team with me, whenever we get to do something together, it's a joke to us because we always say diversity, like, they kind of need us, but you always have that in the back of your head. Am I getting this opportunity because I'm checking the box? And so in the hockey space, we all know that it is a very white, male-dominated space. That's clear. Everybody knows that. And I think we're slowly seeing the game change. Slowly. I would love to see that evolution definitely speed up, but I do see that change. And I think we're seeing women, firstly, get more opportunities in the hockey world, but there also comes with that pressure, because when you have these opportunities, you may only get one shot to succeed. You may only get one opportunity to succeed. You're not given the benefit of the doubt. I think back to NHL All-Star when Kendall Coyne skated that lap and she absolutely blew up. I laugh because I tell Kendall, like, Kendall, if you would have slipped up, if you would have tripped, if you would have fell during that lap, you would have set women back by like 15 years. And that's a lot of pressure to have on one person, right? But that's what happens with marginalized communities. When you get brought up to the level that everybody else is at, you do have one opportunity. And so that definitely adds another layer to, I guess, that pressure. But I do see the hockey world slowly changing because I think that people in power recognize that women, that different people of color, that different people in underrepresented communities do love hockey, and they want to be a part of the game and they want to be accepted into the game. And so for us to grow as a sport, we need to find ways that we can incorporate, make everybody feel welcome, and make everybody feel like they belong, because that's how our sport's going to grow.
That was such a powerful answer, Sarah. Thank you. And, I know so many people, I'm sure, look up to you. And like you say, it's very difficult to be put on that pedestal, but the game is better for people like you using your voice and being able to kind of forge that trail for folks to be able to come in as well. And so, thank you so much for sharing that experience with us.
Thank you.
In terms of what, some of the specific experiences you may have had, like you say, your first one being kind of in that second grade, but also knowing all of the immense accolades you've gone on to achieve since. Wondering if you can tell us about what one of your biggest moments of feeling that imposter syndrome looked like, but also how you tackled it maybe in the moment, as well as, in the days, weeks, months to come afterwards.
Mm-hmm. I think my most recent, I guess, identifiable experience with imposter syndrome, just proof that, it still happens to me. I'm not perfect. I don't claim to be perfect. In the back of my head, yeah, of course I wish I was, but I'm not. I understand that. Actually, recently this February, I started working at Sportsnet doing some doing some hockey analysis in between periods, and I do the pregame show, which we recap the games from the night before, and then we preview the games for the night ahead. And so that's what I started doing this year. It's my first, I guess, real job. I don't have really any experience with broadcast, but I do think that I can speak in front of people fairly well, and I do enjoy talking about hockey. It's something that I've grown up with. It's something that I do. And so it was my first day. I remember I walked in, I was so prepared. I had prepared that entire week so that I wouldn't be stressed or overwhelmed. I had cleared my schedule. I had gotten everything I needed to out of the way so that I could go into this just with a clear mind, prepared, knowing what I was going to talk about. And so I sat down in our meeting after talking to my co-hosts, the producers, who were all super excited to have me, and we did our walkthrough. And so in our walkthrough, we did a quick little 5-minute walkthrough that I only did on my first show. It's not anything that we do normally, but we kind of go through the first maybe 5 minutes of the show. They show me my clips, and then I spoke on them, and then that was it. And so after the walkthrough, I did it with Carolyn Cameron and Anthony Stewart, and they're both very professional. They've been doing it for a while, and they sounded so good. And I felt like I stumbled through the whole thing. I didn't feel confident in what I was saying, and I was so nervous. So I remember leaving my walkthrough, going to my dressing room, looking in the mirror and being like, I have to tell them I cannot go on air tonight. I absolutely can't do it. I completely lost that belief and that confidence in myself that I could do the job. And I felt completely unqualified to do anything. And I let myself wallow in that for like 2 minutes. And I remember just like looking up at myself and I was like, you have to do this. You can do this. And I just looked and I started talking to myself in the mirror and hyped up everything that I've ever done and why I can do this. And so I was telling myself, you look great, you sound great, you've been watching these games, you've been studying these players, you know what you're talking about. You've been playing hockey for 20 years, you know the game inside and out. And, we talk about different strategies that we use when we encounter these situations when we're not feeling as confident. And so for me, I kind of had these escape backup plans. I had one of my best outfits, something that I felt super confident in. I had my gratitude journal with my affirmations in it that I could look back on and read and be like, yeah, you know what? I'm the girl. I can do that. And so after I had that little brief lapse in the mirror, I picked myself up, I put my outfit on, and I went back out into the room and I was like, you know what? It's going to happen. This is live TV. I'm going on in about 5 minutes. I can do this. And that's just what I remember saying before, we had the little 10, 9, 8, the countdown before going live. I was like, you know what? You can do this. You've deserved this. You're prepared for this. You can do this. So I think the biggest thing for me is preparing for those moments and knowing how you are in those moments. For me, like I mentioned before, it shows up as self-doubt, and it shows up as, if I'm not perfect, I'm going to be disappointed in myself. And I have to completely clear that from my mind and say, perfection isn't possible, and it's knowing yourself and having those coping mechanisms and strategies so that you can overcome.
Absolutely. First of all, we know that sportscasting in all its forms, but especially hockey broadcasting in Canada, needs more women. So I'm really glad to hear that you are doing that. I think you're totally right. I think everybody has those feelings. And I'm sure because of the pressures you previously described of feeling like it's all eyes on you, and you're being put on this pedestal and folks are looking at you a certain way because of that experience, I'm sure it is very difficult to go out. But I'm so glad to hear that it went well, that you were able to have that, moment of, I am 100% that girl and just go out and crush it, which I'm sure you did. Okay, so our last question is, for our participants who've tuned in today, what is your 3 best pieces of advice for young women to develop their confidence and navigate imposter syndrome?
Mm-hmm. So I wrote these down so that I would remember and I can refer back to.
Preparedness.
But
You already
preparedness, right? Exactly. So for me, like, as I mentioned multiple times throughout this, that self-doubt and lack of confidence can creep in. And so for me, a huge strategy that I do, that I talk to my friends about all the time, is actually speaking things, like saying things out loud or writing them down. When you have those fears or you have those doubts in your mind, saying them out loud or writing them down makes them, I guess, tangible. And you can actually kind of see how ridiculous those self-doubts are. And it's something that I've used because you can build things up in your head. Like, we've all gone there, listening to sad music, you're not feeling your best. We have all been there. And so when you're in your head, you need to find a way to get out of it. And so one of my biggest strategies, again, saying things out loud and writing it down, because it's never as bad as it is in your head. My next is asking, often we ask ourselves, well, why me? Why do I get this opportunity? But what we should be asking is, why not me? We always think of the negatives. We think of why we can't do things, but why don't we think of why we can do things? We always think of the bad that can happen in a certain situation, bad outcome, bad circumstance, but we never think of the good possibilities that could happen, because, we have those fears and they definitely come out. So again, I try to ask myself, well, why not me? And then I try to think in my head, I try to list out all of the reasons why I can do something, why I am qualified to do something. And that usually helps me. And honestly, it's something that takes practice. It's not something that, is developed overnight. And sometimes it may sound ridiculous. It may sound like I'm lying to myself right now, but eventually you're going to believe and you're going to understand that you have these qualities within you. Once you say them out loud, once you write them down multiple times, it's going to start sounding normal to you. And you're going to be like, yes, I can do that. I am that girl. And then my last piece of advice was to be your own biggest fan, be your own biggest cheerleader, and don't seek or use external validation. I talk about this from an athlete's perspective all the time, because there are going to be days in the gym, on the court, on the ice, when you're going to be by yourself, when there's not going to be a coach, when there's not going to be your teammates, your friends sitting there cheering you on. And ultimately that motivation is going to have to come from within. And so on those days when things are hard, when you have to put your head down and get your work done or do that last rep in the gym, you have to have that internal motivation and say, you know what, I have to do this. This is for me, and have that goal in mind, because that's going to help you so much. So try not to seek that external validation, because that's not always going to be there. What's always going to be there is you, your thoughts, and your power. So make sure you own that power.
So well said. Being your biggest cheerleader, and like you say, putting those positive affirmations out, really going for it and manifesting, not only what's possible, but what you deserve and what you've been working for. I feel like there's so much I can take away from what you shared. And I'm sure all of the participants feel the same way. I was thinking maybe we might be able to take one question from Q&A, perhaps?
Sure.
A quick one. So if folks want to go into Q&A mode and ask a quick question while Sarah's still with us.
See a lot of good conversation in the chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people could be up here talking about imposter syndrome with us.
Well, it just seems to be a universal experience, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's so many experiences that need to be shared.
100%. Okay, so we've got our question. This comes from Ria. So Ria says, hello. Thanks so much for organizing this important conversation. Question to you both. What do you do/say when you receive backhanded compliments /comments/jabs regarding being a woman or a woman of color, diversity quota, et cetera, et cetera? So when someone's coming at you and saying, basically, you're here because you're a woman or you're here because you're a woman of color, what do you say to that? Mm-hmm. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing in those situations that I try to decipher is this coming from a malicious place, or is it not coming from you know, a malicious place, because there are people who try to take digs at you by using those backhand compliments, and there are other people who don't mean it in the way that they have presented it. And so for option one, when they don't really know what they just said or they don't understand what they just said, I try to help them understand how that made me feel and how that could possibly make another woman or another woman of color feel, and almost educate them a little bit in the moment. And then for the people who I can tell it was made with a little bit of a malicious intent, I ask them to clarify themselves and explain more about the question, because often when you dig a little deeper, when you peel another layer of the onion back, people trip up a little bit and they have to admit their faults and admit they're wrong. And so that's what I kind of do. If they're going to try and give it to me, I'm going to give it right back.
100%. First of all, both such smart answers, especially the second one where when you're putting it back on someone and, like you say, really asking them what they really mean, because as the person who asked the question said, you know, it's backhanded. They're trying to be quote unquote subtle about whatever it is they're trying to get at. For you to put them back on the spot and say, really, you know, what do you mean by that? I think is really smart. But, you know, I think we do have a long way to go in terms of women seeing themselves in these spaces, but having role models like you, Sarah, who are unafraid to stand up and say, you know, I'm here because I worked hard. I'm here because I deserve this. I've done everything and more to be here. It makes it easier for all of us who are looking to your example when it comes to having those conversations ourselves. So with that, we are pretty much at time, but for folks who are asking questions in the chat, we will be having some Q&A later. So I'd say hold on to those. And Sarah is also, I believe, going to be joining the group as a participant. So I'm sure she'll be able to jump in on the chat there. But just wanted to say thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us today and for all of your insights. I know I'm going to be starting my gratitude journal tonight. I'm hoping,
necessary.
Right, I'll be hoping for the best. I'll let you know how it goes. Miriam's going to be joining us here shortly, but thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the webinar.
Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.
Bye.
All right. Hi, Miriam. How are you?
Hello. Good. Thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. So now we are going to be moving into the second half of this evening's event with Girls20's very own Miriam Butu. Miriam is an experienced development professional with over 14 years of leadership experience in the field and a psychology degree from the University of Toronto. As an entrepreneur, educator, and professional speaker, Miriam has built 2 businesses, very impressive, taught at York University and Humber College, and has led several personal and professional development workshops in Canada and abroad. Miriam is incredibly passionate about women tapping into the power within, and as a result, creating massive impact in the world. So please welcome Miriam Butu.
Thank you, Clancy. Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with you all. And I'm really excited to see that you're already engaging and chatting because that's exactly what we're going to do for the next half an hour together. You know, I don't have anybody to talk to on the screen like the fireside chat, so I'm literally here talking to you. So I would really appreciate it if you would talk back, and I'm reading all of your messages and, you know, I'm seeing your questions. So I'm excited to dive right in. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. So how do you feel after hearing that discussion? I found it so inspiring, and, you know, it's always incredible to hear from a very successful person that imposter syndrome is very much a real thing. It's still being experienced. And I think that's something we really want to, I really want to talk about that, to say that, you know, the goal is not to eliminate imposter syndrome. The goal is really, you know, and, you know, maybe backtracking a little bit. Imposter syndrome exists for a reason. There is systemic racism. You know, we have ableism in the workplace. We have homophobia in the workplace. Our systems were not designed to include us, right? Inclusivity was not in mind when, you know, our workplaces were originally designed. And we have a lot of work to do to be able to get to that point. So really, I mean, it's no wonder that we feel like we don't belong in workplaces. And we feel this imposter syndrome often when we're at work. So I think that's something that's extremely important to note. On the other side, when we're talking about systemic issues, it's not as easy as like flipping on a switch and being like, okay, well, today I'm going to make sure that I don't experience any systemic racism. We know that's not possible. And we know that what's in our control is actually the reactions that we have to situations in our environment. And that's really what I want to talk to you about today. And the goal for me is really to help you understand a little bit more deeply your experiences of imposter syndrome, how it shows up for you, and then talk a little bit about how to manage those reactions, and more importantly, the impact of your reactions, because it really is a chain effect, right? So essentially, I want to help us kind of dig in, understand it a little bit better, and then with that awareness, hopefully awareness that will start today but build over the next weeks and months and hopefully longer, you'll be able to get a bit of a handle on the imposter syndrome and develop those tools through the practice to overcome it. So first and foremost, well, I guess that's not first and foremost. We've already gone through a lot. Okay, so I have a slide, I think, that should be popping up soon. I said I would look at the comments. I'm already not multitasking very well. So let me take a quick look. Okay, good. I don't see the slide yet. I will continue going. There we go. Okay. So the very first thing I'll say before we jump into this is, if you can grab a piece of paper and a pencil or a notepad on your phone or on your computer or whatever, I really want to have you kind of writing things down. There's something really powerful, as Sarah noted, there's something really powerful about getting things that are in your head out of your head. So right now, I'll be asking you a lot of questions, and I really want to encourage you to actually write them down somewhere so that they're, occupying space outside of your head. So the very first question is, again, in an attempt to really build awareness around your personal experience with imposter syndrome, I want you to give some thought to when and where you tend to experience imposter syndrome. Generally speaking, there are patterns in our lives, and we experience the same things over and over and over again in a pattern. And so it tends to be, in the same place or with the same people or under the same kind of circumstances. So, if anything came to you during the fireside chat, when you were listening to Sarah and Clancy have their conversation, make a note. When was the last time that you actually experienced imposter syndrome? I'll give you a minute. And, I have some prompting questions there at the bottom. Where are you when this generally happens? Who are you with? What are you doing? And what kind of conversations are taking place around you? So I'll give you a second to write down a couple of notes. And if you're comfortable, I would love for you to share in the chat. There's a bit of a delay between you and I in the chat, so it's always a little bit awkward as you wait for the answers to come through, but I trust you all. I trust that they are coming. Nina, in an environment where no one looks like me. Excellent. Agreed. For me, it is whenever I'm in a position of authority. In fact, it was today. Ariba, thank you. In an academic, workplace, sport activity. Yeah. Ali says, my imposter syndrome shows in my body language. Sometimes, even if I'm confident in what I'm saying, my hands shake or I forget to make eye contact. It usually kicks in. It's disappearing. It usually kicks in when I'm in meetings or presenting to a group audience. These are all really, really great answers. So, with this kind of specific information that you're writing down, this is really going to help you understand when you're being triggered and when you're kind of going into a place of imposter syndrome. And the whole idea with everything we're going to talk about today is really to be able to identify that ASAP and deal with it right away. So keep thinking about that as we move forward, and I think it'll become clearer and clearer. And continue to share. I think, what we've learned about imposter syndrome and what we'll continue to learn, I think, really forever is that we're not alone in it. We all experience it. And I think that's really powerful about a group like this and in a workshop like this, where we can all see each other's comments and see that we're not alone and that, you know, we all experience this. So it's a beautiful sense of community. So please do share if you're comfortable. You never know, like, when your comment is really going to impact somebody else in the group. All right. Let's see. You know what? Actually, going back here, I'll tell you super quickly about a situation. You know, for me, I wanted to share a little bit of my personal experience with you as well. I find personally that imposter syndrome shows up for me when I'm in a new situation, you know, when things are not predictable, especially like if I'm working with a brand new team, not so aware of people's expectations of me. I have perfectionistic tendencies, which I believe that a lot of people who experience imposter syndrome do. They're typically high achievers, you know. So anyways, I like predictability. You know, my nature is that I want to impress, I want to, you know, deliver all the things. So when I'm in a space where I can't really predict what's going on around me, that's when my imposter syndrome really shows up. And so, you know, for me, that I know kind of in advance that I'm likely to be triggered. So if you can think about your environment in that way, so that almost like the more you get used to it, you can predict what's going to happen before you get there and get ahead of it. All right, moving on. What does your imposter syndrome feel like in your body? You know, I think that a lot of what we hear about imposter syndrome is about what we think about. And I think we need to backtrack a little bit, because what happens before we even think is that we feel something. We feel a reaction in our bodies. For me, I can tell you that feels like the jitters. It feels like my heart is beating really, really, really fast. It feels like I want to like run away. So, you know, that's personal to me. We're all going to have different experiences. So again, this is another way for you to get more in touch with what imposter syndrome feels like to you, so that you can identify it, so that you can predict it better, and then, you know, eventually so that you can get ahead of it. So let me know in the comments, how does it make you feel? I love this. Cold fingers and feet. It's suffocating. A pit in my stomach. Yes. Yes, yes, absolutely. So nerve-wracking and my heart beats hella fast. Yeah, I hear you. I know the feeling. Shaky hands, super dry mouth, pit in my tummy. Yeah, all of these are, you know, Sob says, my imposter syndrome shows up often when I'm in new environments or meeting new people. I feel like I have to prove myself and it makes me feel insecure and inadequate. Yes, I am 100% with you. And I think, you know, take note of everything, anything that comes to your mind. We all have these experiences. You're here because you know what imposter syndrome is. You've experienced it, you felt it, and it feels, I'm going to guess that it feels a little bit outside of your control. And I think that that's the power of awareness. If we can bring our awareness to the experience itself and really break it down, you know, like, where am I when this happens? How do I feel? It really helps you and gives you the tools to actually do something about that. So I hope your list is growing. You know, now you have some information about your environment. You have some information about how it makes you feel. So keep that going. And please keep sharing. I love it. I love the sharing in the chat. Okay, so the next one is a little bit trickier. And that is, what thoughts do you have when you're experiencing imposter syndrome? And I say that that's tricky because our brains are extremely smart. We have so many thoughts in a day. We can't possibly be aware of all the thoughts. And I think that it's also really easy to trick ourselves and tell ourselves we're thinking one thing when we're really thinking another thing. So awareness around our thoughts is extremely important, but it's also kind of the last thing that comes. We can become aware of our environment and aware of how our emotions feel. Our emotions, you know, are physically felt in our body, and that's why we can feel them, you know, and we can know that we're having a feeling much more quickly than we can know that we're having a thought. So that's why I started with those things. And so, if you're at the point where you've been practicing self-awareness for a really long time, you might be already pretty aware of what your thoughts are. And that's the case. If that's the case, then excellent. And I'd love to know, what are the thoughts that you have in those situations? I have a lot personally of, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve to be here. How did I even get here? Is this luck? Right? I remember I spoke on a stage back in 2 years ago or something. And, it was an opportunity to share my story. And I remember thinking, like, my story is not powerful enough. My story is not vulnerable enough. I didn't have this like super traumatic story that I could share that, and so even in ways like that, like, it's almost like you compare your trauma with other people and you have imposter syndrome around that. So there's so many ways that the thoughts really show up. And if you can identify them, then that's a huge help. Let's see if oh yeah, we have a bunch of self-aware people in here. That's amazing. I'm only here because I got lucky. I wasn't supposed to be here. I feel someone else deserves this more than I do. I don't belong in that situation. I'm the least qualified person in this room. Yes, 100%, I felt that. My thought is, if I'm nice, it'll be okay. I don't know enough to talk about this subject. I don't want to sound stupid. I'm scared of doing something wrong. So good. This is amazing. This is amazing. I don't think I deserve to be here. Look at everyone else. Then there is me. Like, fraud, dumb luck. Do I deserve it? Comparing myself. Okay, this is really, really great. And I'm so glad to see all of these, because what this means to me is that you can action this, because it's really the thought. Like, if we can reframe the thought, that's where the change is going to be visible in your life and in your experiences. So I'm really, really glad to see that you're all kind of thinking, you can identify the thoughts. So incredible. If you're sitting there right now watching this and you're thinking, I have no idea what's going on in my head in this experience, it's okay. Remember that you can pay attention to the feelings and the sensations in your body. You can reflect on this later, even if it's not coming to you. And if that still doesn't come to you, it's fine. I can almost guarantee you're gonna experience imposter syndrome again, unfortunately. And when you do, then you'll notice the feelings. You'll be like, oh, I get it. Okay, there's key things in the environment. Oh, I always tend to feel this way when I'm in a room full of executives that don't look like me, for example. So yeah, don't worry if the thoughts aren't coming to you very naturally. Okay. Next step. What types of action does your imposter syndrome lead you to? So as we kind of talked about very briefly, we react to triggers in our environment. So we feel a certain way, we think certain things, and that's okay. But the challenge is that those thoughts and those emotions lead us to actions. And those actions tend to be self-sabotaging actions. So, and that's where we start feeling really bad about the imposter syndrome, right? That's where we say, like, oh, I should have spoken up. I should have said something. Why did I feel so terrible in that room? So think about, like, when you're feeling that way, what does that actually look like in terms of the impact of the reaction? So while you are starting to kind of pop it in, and I should tell you, there are prompts on this slide too. So fight, flight, or freeze, like very, very, very common reactions to any type of threat in the environment. And you might not see imposter syndrome as like a response to a threat, but it often is. It often is a response to fear. And so, and again, like the brain kind of reacts with a feeling first, then a thought to the actual threat. And so our bodies kind of interpret it like you would if you saw a snake in front of you or something. I don't wish that on anybody. That's happened to me, and it is not fun. But yeah, you either you're ready to fight, you tense up, you go into defense mode, or you are in flight mode, or you're in freeze mode. And these are really common. I'm sure you're all careful, or you're all kind of aware of, you know, what you tend to do in what situations. Another thing I've heard from people who experience imposter syndrome is that they do hours and hours of research before responding to a question, because they don't want to seem like they don't know the answer, and they don't want to tell anybody that they don't know the answer. So they spend tons of time researching so that they can show that, yes, I am competent and I am deserving, you know, of this position or of being here or whatnot. Turning down opportunities is another one. So if your imposter syndrome leads you to turn down opportunities, and this can be straight up saying no to job opportunities, or it could also be just, you know, shutting doors kind of on your own because you're not actively engaging in a situation. You know, so for me, when I'm experiencing imposter syndrome, I pull back. You know, I don't engage, I get really quiet, I don't participate. So of course I can't shine, right? Of course I'm dimming my light in that situation. There's no opportunity for anybody to see the good that I bring to the table if I've completely disengaged from the environment that I'm in. So for me, that's how I kind of, it's almost like an inadvertent way of closing doors of opportunity for myself. Being extra quiet, which we talked about, and you know, preventing yourself from sharing your opinion. So what are the kinds of things that you all experience in terms of actions? You know, what does it lead to? I'm going to check out the comments here. You're all amazing. Just writing down so many things. I love it. This is how it's going to be actionable for all of you. I apologize out of nowhere. I don't know to whom. Yes, you are not alone. We all do that. It's really bad sometimes to overthink so much. Everything I said sounds stupid or annoying. Yes. It's almost an out-of-body experience. Yeah, I leave, turn down opportunities, or get isolated, bottling up all of my thoughts, turning down opportunities. Like, yes, okay. So we see the impact, right? We see the impact of the imposter syndrome actually showing up, and like there's a cause and there's an effect, right? If it was just staying in our heads and we were feeling off, then not great, but also like not too bad, right? But the fact that it has an impact and then causes us to feel even worse about ourselves and all of that, you know, it's clear that it's something that we really want to kind of grasp and understand more deeply so that we can address it better. All right, so now the good part that you've all been waiting for. Sorry, I'm having a second, an issue just changing my slide. There we go. Okay, so here's what's happening when imposter syndrome kind of takes over your body. Essentially, there's something in the environment that triggers it. And the fascinating thing about the trigger is that it's often subconscious. So it's not that you see like, it's not as easy as saying like, oh, I'm in a boardroom. The boardroom is a trigger for me. So no wonder I'm having this experience of imposter syndrome. It's not like that. It's a learned kind of pathway, like an automatic reaction in your brain that says, oh, I've been here before. I know exactly how to react to this. And again, it's fear, and it's a protective mechanism. So the walls go up and you shut down, or whatever the experience is for you. So the trigger is really, really important to understand. And that's where we were talking about the environment, where you are, what you're doing, who you're with, what are you talking about? All of those things are really to help you understand the trigger. And because it's automatic, that's why the awareness is extremely important. So try to pay attention to that as you move forward in the rest of your experiences, because yes, you'll get a little bit of awareness today, but the real practice is going to come later as you start to apply it in your actual experiences moving forward. So the trigger leads to the feeling, and the feeling could be an emotion, like sad, happy, scared, or it could be an actual physical sensation in your body where, your heart's racing, you're sweating, you literally freeze. So this is kind of the order of events that takes place. Trigger, you get the feelings, then you get the thoughts, right? And the funny thing is, or it's not that funny, but the interesting thing, I guess, is that we're so unaware of the thoughts that sometimes we don't even think we have them at all. but we do have them, right? And often, all of this happens in like a millisecond, and we're not aware of any of it. All you know is let's say, as an example, you're in this boardroom and suddenly you're snapping back at somebody and having an argument, right? And so you think, like, when you look at the experience, you think you went from trigger to behavior, but there's all these steps in between, and that's where the awareness is really going to help us. So the awareness is a huge part, as you can see from everything that we're discussing. Let me catch up a little bit on the chat, see if I missed anything. Vicky says, when I openly talked about my imposter syndrome, it was so humbling to hear from peers I look up to and admire tell me they experience the same feelings. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry. Skipped ahead. All right. So what are we going to do about this situation? Now we understand the cycle. We understand that there's a trigger, there's a feeling that follows, a thought that follows, and then there's some behavior. And generally that behavior is some form of self-sabotage, right? So now, like, if we end the webinar right here, you would have tons of opportunity to walk away and reflect and think about, your experiences so far, and also take that with you for your future experiences. But what do you do with, like, how do we change this cycle? That's really like the really big question that we all want to answer, right? And I think there are multiple ways that you can go about changing this. You can, I'll tell you the less effective ways first. You can change the feeling. So let's say you're feeling anxious, or I'm not gonna lie to you, I felt a little bit of imposter syndrome while I created this imposter syndrome workshop, and as I was preparing to deliver this imposter syndrome workshop. So it is a real thing, and right before I got on live, I was like, ooh, okay. What I could have done is turned on Alicia Keys' This Girl Is on Fire, which is my tune that pumps me up and I feel like super powerful. And it would have worked temporarily, right? It would have pumped me up, would have made me feel good. I didn't do it, and I'm fine. So, the feeling itself, you can manage it, but it's not a long-term solution. It'll help you in that instant, but you walk away thinking about that trigger and why did you still behave this way, and all of that will still happen. The most effective way to deal with this is to actually reframe the thought. And the best way, of course, you have to be able to identify the thought first to be able to reframe it. And that's why we went through this whole process talking about awareness and, really learning to identify the thought by paying attention to everything that surrounds the thought, right? When you actually have the thought, and this is why I was so happy to see that, all of you are able to identify your thoughts. That's huge. That's like massive, massive progress. Now your challenge, and it's actually going to be your homework. You can start it now because we have a couple of minutes, but we don't have too much time. But really what I want you to think about is, in order to reframe the thought, you want to find contrary evidence to that thought. So if you say, for example, I don't belong in a room full of executives that are 20 years older than me and don't look like me at all. That might be the thought that you're having. I don't belong here. I'm too young to be here. Okay, so if the task at hand is to look for evidence that is opposite to that, then you're going to start looking for experiences that you've had in your life already where it will counter that. So maybe you were in a meeting with executives that was smaller. So instead of a meeting of 20 people, now there was only 5 people, and you did great, right? Maybe you got complimented and you got some feedback and you said, oh, you know what? I'm sure you've all been in the situation where you feel like things went terribly, and then you hear back from others that you did great, and that you were not how you perceived yourself to be, right? So you really want to think back to those kind of reaffirming experiences so that you can almost not just prove to yourself, like your conscious self, but literally rewire the automatic response that's happening in your brain. So you want to be able to tell yourself, no, that's not actually true. I do belong in this space. And here are the 5 other examples that I've been in, or the 5 other situations that I've been in that were successful. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. So if you're in a boardroom, it doesn't have to be another experience in a boardroom. It could be that you ended up walking in the hallway, like bumping into the CEO of your company and had a really great chat and you really connected. Okay, so that says something, that you're able to connect with executives and you've got what it takes and you're competent enough, to hold a conversation. So really think about, when we talk about transferable skills, it's like one of those things. You want to be able to look back and say, what else is relevant in my life that proves that I'm actually perfectly capable of being in this space, right? So that's really the task at hand, right? You hear a lot about affirmations. We hear about changing the negative thought to a positive thought. That is really hard to do when you don't believe the thought to be true. So that's where it becomes really challenging. So my homework for you is to really think about all of the evidence, all those thoughts that you wrote down. I want you to think about evidence against them and write those down, keep them handy, refer to them often, put them wherever is easily accessible, so that when you have a moment like that, you can literally just recite them. You can say them over and over and over again until it sinks in. So that's your homework. That's what I want you to take away from this. So kind of to summarize, what we learned today was to identify the patterns in your imposter syndrome, build awareness around the environments and situations that trigger it, build awareness around the emotions, sensations, and reactions it leads to, identify the thoughts that keep you in the fear loop, and then find contrary evidence to counter those thoughts. So if you want to take a picture of this slide, this is going to be like your framework, your formula to overcome, or like to better manage your reactions, I'll say, to imposter syndrome. Okay. I'm sorry, I've fallen behind on the on the comments, but I can see you all writing, and I really, really appreciate that. I'm super aware of the fact that the time is running out, so I want to wrap this up. I hope that it was really, really helpful. I want to say that, at Girls20, our mission is to advance the full participation of young women in decision-making spaces, and that's complex. We have the systemic issues to kind of battle with. And as we said, imposter syndrome is oh, I see Clancy and I'm like, I gotta jump off. Imposter syndrome is really, a result of systemic racism and bias. And so, we're really trying to work on that side of the issue through advocacy, and also working with young women to help you get those tools to actually, move forward. So now you've made me nervous because you're back and I gotta wrap it up. Okay, so I had one more slide. I think it's too late. What I was gonna say on the slide was that you belong in every space. Practice is what this is gonna take. It's not gonna be an overnight solution. And perfection, as Sarah said, I'll reiterate what Sarah said, perfection does not exist. Let's not aim for that. Let's aim for progress. Progress, progress, progress. And you'll get there. And if you want to reach out to me, please do. I'll join in the comments in just a second and drop in my email and such. But thank you so much. Thank you for your engagement in the chat. I so appreciate that. I really felt like I was in a conversation with you all. So thank you.
Honestly, Miriam, I feel like you are the perfect example of saying that you felt like you had imposter syndrome and you literally came in and schooled us all on how to get better. Thank you so much. I've got even more things to work on in my new journal that I'm starting tonight. So thank you for the homework as well.
Of course. I'll turn it over to you, Clancy.
Awesome. Thank you. Again, just wanted to say thank you to both Miriam, but also to Sarah as well for their participation this evening. We certainly hope that you folks had a good and informative time. I want to thank you all for sticking around to the very end. I would ask you to maybe do a little virtual drum roll at home. Our first winner is Marie Ann Gonsalves. And our second winner is Ria Bhatia. And both of them will be winning a year's supply of Revlon ColorStay LifeProof products. For folks who unfortunately did not win, that's okay, because you can check out Revlon's LifeProof products on their ColorStay LifeProof Amazon page. So if you're interested in checking those out, I certainly encourage you to do so. We would also love to encourage you to attend our second webinar in this series, which is on June 17th. Please register if you haven't. That topic is going to be all about negotiations, which I know is personally a topic I really love. So you'll see me there for sure. We're also going to be sending around a recording of the webinar. Lots of content tonight, lots of learnable takeaways. So don't worry if you didn't have the pen and pad out the entire time, we will be sending a recording. And with that, I just want to say thank you to everyone, and we hope you have a great evening. Take care, everyone.